End Times Prophecy News Update. This is Carrie Geren Scoggins, coming to you with a story concerning what lies ahead for the Christian community due to this transgender craze. We've seen many changes concerning what's to be socially acceptable and a push for violating Christian civil rights in making this change. The legal right to oppose the state's viewpoint, the mere fact that the state is making a viewpoint concerning the LGBT community and what is referred to as transgender. The military in the United States now accepting transgenders. The UN changing their stance from noting transgender as being a sign of mental illness that the United States American Medical Association identified as gender identity disorder, GID, as well as the UN, prior having made homosexuality considered a human right in their human rights campaign. Hillary Clinton's push for the gay agenda, even going as far as to not just imply, but clearly state the need to forcibly change the Christian faith's views concerning abortion and other issues, bringing up the LGBT and homosexuality agenda. What lies ahead for the Christian church and the Christian civil rights? We've already had a push in the federal Supreme Court, landing the Christians the legal right to adhere to biblical core values, citing Romans chapter 1. The Christian's legal right to adhere to a full uncensored Bible, including scriptures that do not condone homosexuality. The overturning of Obama-Pelosi's hate speech law in the Phelps hearings, upholding our legal right to debate the issue. And more court precedents, citing our legal rights as Christians on the job, such as Kim Davis, the court clerk in Kentucky, who was wrongfully arrested violating the 1964 Civil Rights Act Title VII, and upon her release, restating that Christians cannot be forced to violate their religious tenets while on the job. The 1964 Civil Rights Act, giving religion protected class status, covering Christian civil rights straight across the board. Churches, Christian schools, Christians in public schools, Christians on the job and in every walk of life. Let's take another look at this move for the transgender agenda. And noting the biblical core values ruling, the Christian's legal right concerning the military to refuse to accept transgender due to Deuteronomy 22:5. Christian civil rights in the military, a big issue in modern day America. From the U.S. Department of Education's attempt to redefine what it means to be male or female, to the state of New York demanding that there now be accepted 31 genders, to the school systems now teaching fluidity, a propaganda term meaning that there is no 100% male or female, and basically that the individual has fluidity that fluctuates backward and forward, that one day they'll feel more feminine than the other, and that there is no, quote, 100% male or female, to be taught in the public schools on our taxpayer money. noting that the American Medical Association restated recently in the DOMA hearings, after the new studies, that there was no proof that they were born gay. There has never been found a gay gene to date, that there were no epigenetic markers cutting on a gay gene, nor were there a clump of genes found that create a homosexual. Again, Pandora's box was opened by teaching evolution as fact rather than theory, and this is being carried on into other aspects of education, including the acceptance of homosexuality, even now treating transgender as if it was not gender identity disorder, as identified by the American Medical Association, but rather just a natural occurrence, and we're to see it as diversity. Where is the Christian student's civil rights? The legal right to adhere to biblical core values and their First Amendment rights are upheld while on government land. The legal right to oppose the state's viewpoint. The legal right for Christian students to oppose the state implementing a viewpoint on issues such as homosexuality, or violating separation of church and state by telling the student that their beliefs against homosexuality is outdated or wrong. Other areas of our government swamped by the gay agenda, pushed by Democrats, include the military. Remembering back to the Clinton administration, where allowing gays in the military was then pushed through, calling it Don't Ask, Don't Tell, then the reversal of such ruling to allow homosexuality and lesbianism in the military, and now Democrats have pushed through allowing transgenders in the military, going so far as to want to use military funds to pay for sex changes. The liberal Democrats seem consumed with the gay rights agenda, yet ignore the Christian civil rights, and this includes the American military's servicemen's Christian civil rights. Obama and the Democrats' push to get a transgender over the Faith Advisory Council, an unconstitutional entity that Obama himself created that violates separation of church and state, in that the state cannot endorse religion nor take part in it, including a religious advisory council such as this, especially to be headed up by a leftist that is blatantly anti-Christian. The political left, such as the Democratic Party, has continued to bombard the Christians with a demand to change their religious beliefs in order to accommodate the Democratic Party platform, which is pro-gay marriage and pro-abortion. We've seen this from newspaper columnists all the way to Hillary Clinton, where she demands that the Christian faith be changed in order to remove any opposition to the support of keeping abortion legal. It's become standard procedure for liberal leftists to attempt to censor any opposing viewpoint. It started with Chuck Schumer wanting to amend the First Amendment, targeting anyone that opposed the Democratic Party platform onto Hillary Clinton, and others such as Nancy Pelosi and Obama wanting to call anything that opposed their viewpoint on homosexuality to be hate speech. Of course, the hate speech laws were overturned in the federal Supreme Court, upholding our legal right to debate the issue In the Phelps hearing, the Democrats' attempt at censorship is just showing of how the Democratic Party platform now fully mirrors that of Marxism. They've gone that far to the left on the political line. The UN and EU still have their hate speech laws that enforce Bible censorship on the homosexuality issue. Note that the Democrats in the United States and Hillary Clinton's views do not differ from that of the leftist Marxists in the United Nations and the socialist countries of the EU, such as Hillary Clinton's Goals 2000, written when Bill Clinton was governor of Arkansas. Hillary wrote this for the schools, hoping to enforce that parents teaching their children, quote, biblical references to homosexuality would have their children taken from them and them arrested for a hate crime. Violating separation of church and state, bringing in religious censorship, separation of church and state and keeping the state out of the church, and tossing out the First Amendment. This, of course, was not adapted by the United States, as it was unconstitutional. However, it became a charter in the UN Rights of the Child. We see even long after the United Nations adopted Hillary Clinton's Goals 2000, making it illegal for the parent to teach the child the biblical references to homosexuality, making it a hate crime, to now the UN referring to parents taking their children to church as a human rights violation. The civil rights being violated is that of the Christian parents. Parental rights laws. Though the United Nations has trampled upon Christian civil rights endlessly over the past 30 years, they've now deemed homosexuality a human right, as well as recently taking transgender off the list of mental illness symptoms, no longer identifying it as gender identity disorder. Their LGBT rights, human rights campaign has been vast. They've initiated a czar to promote homosexuality and transgenderism, who has pushed the gay agenda through the United Nations, caring little for the Christian civil rights or the legal rights of those that oppose it. Remembering the United Nations has nothing akin to what we refer to as our First Amendment rights here in the United States, as they have no freedom of the press, they do not have a legal right to protest, there is no separation of church and state in the UN, keeping the state out of the churches, preventing religious censorship, nor preventing state endorsement of religion, that we see in the World Council of Churches, part of the United Nations and integrated into, which is a religious group that one would never find inside the United States, due to it violating that wall of separation of church and state. There is no freedom of religion in the United Nations. All that we have enjoyed as freedoms of our First Amendment rights would dissipate if our government were to sign on to the global court system, the 5 global courts of the United Nations. It becomes more evident daily that the Christians need to be more aware of their own civil rights, as we hear more and more cases of Christians having their civil rights violated due to this push for the gay agenda. Whether it's the Christian bakeries' civil rights concerning not baking wedding cakes for gay weddings, that covered in the 1964 Civil Rights Act, Title VII, where no one can be, and this reaffirmed in the Biblical Core Values Federal Supreme Court ruling, upholding the Christian's legal right to adhere to biblical core values. citing that of Romans chapter 1 and scriptures that do not condone homosexuality, as well as all tenets of the King James Bible. The Christian's legal right to adhere to biblical core values in all walks of life, not just their religious institutions, but on the job and in their private businesses, and on government land, such as students in school. The state of New York cannot force Christians to accept that there's 31 genders. The biblical core values ruling protects Christian civil rights, their legal right to adhere to the book of Genesis scripture stating that God created them male and female. Deuteronomy 22:5, that a man shall not wear that which pertains to a woman, for such is an abomination unto God. The biblical core values ruling also protects Romans chapter 1, the teaching that homosexuality is the end result of having known God and left Him, then been given over to a reprobate mind. That described in Romans 1:21, they knew who God was and refused to serve Him as God. 1:25, they went over and worshiped the creation rather than the Creator, or went over into other religions. And then Romans 1:28, finally, they're given over to a reprobate mind for having done so. And the teaching of deliverance, being set free from homosexuality, is also protected by the biblical core values ruling, remembering that the attempt to ban change therapy did not pass due to biblical counselors, those teaching deliverance and being set free from homosexuality. That teaching being to go back and undo the process they've engaged in, which caused them to be given over to a reprobate mind. The having known God, known the Bible and the truth, and then left it, and went over into other religions, and then finally given over to a reprobate mind. In that chronological order, Romans 1:21, 1:25, and 1:28. The teachings of homosexuality being considered sin or of a reprobate mind is protected by the First Amendment, the biblical core values ruling, the civil rights that Christians have enjoyed here in the United States and will continue on. Yet Christians need to be ongoing in their political activism to ensure that this right is passed on to their children and their children's children. Christian churches, ministers, religious counselors, and Christian schools, as well as Christian groups and Christians in their everyday life, have the legal right to adhere to biblical core values and to teach deliverance from homosexuality. The legal right to proselytize, to spread the gospel, including that of Romans chapter 1, was upheld in the federal Supreme Court. As the Freedom from Religion Foundation did not win a freedom from religion, there is no freedom from religion. Those that fear offending others when stating their religious beliefs must remember there is no freedom from religion, and we now have the legal right to, quote, debate the issues. Upheld when the federal Supreme Court overturned the hate speech laws in the Phelps hearing. Our legal right to debate the issues. The federal Supreme Court cited our legal right to debate homosexuality, Islam, abortion, or any issue from a biblical viewpoint. In the Phelps hearings, overturning the hate speech laws and ensuring our legal right to say things that oppose other people's viewpoints, including that of the Democratic Party. The legal right to debate the issues is the legal right to argue, to oppose another's viewpoint, to stand their ground or defend biblical beliefs. This legal right, upheld by the federal Supreme Court when overturning the hate speech laws, carries over into our life in social media, as well as our students in the public schools, to the pastors preaching and teaching in the churches, religious groups, and Christian schools. The legal right to debate any issue from any viewpoint. Freedom straight across the board. Freedom for the Christians to oppose the state's viewpoint or oppose the Democratic Party platform. Freedom straight across the board for Christians too. Though the teaching of freedom straight across the board for those on the right side of the political line as well is no longer being taught in our public schools, it is indeed the civil rights of the right-wing, religious right, Libertarian Party, Tea Party, Republicans, and those considered to the right of the political line. The left has been attempting to censor out the opposition on an ongoing basis. It's time for the Christians and the right wing to stand up and begin to demand their civil rights enforced. It is the duty of every Christian and every parent to notify legislators, the media, and get politically active, making sure that the Christian civil rights laws are noted for public awareness, preventing religious discrimination. This has been another End Times Prophecy News Update. Carrie Geren Scoggins. Thank you for listening.